Let's just dive right into this explainer created for the Fun Archive. It's called The Psychology of People Who Are Smart But Can't Succeed. And today, we're going to hold up a mirror to a pretty painful reality. Have you ever wondered why being a so-called gifted kid often leads to feeling completely, utterly stuck as an adult? If you were that kid who never really had to study, who breezed through the work and got constant praise just for being special, you probably figured you had a fast pass to a truly great life. But as we all find out, adulthood is not a structured classroom, and those early habits, they often backfire big time.
So why do smart people fail? What's absolutely wild about this fundamental question is that your high intelligence isn't just failing to guarantee your success. It might actually be the very thing holding you back. You aren't failing in spite of how exceptionally smart you are. You're likely failing because of it. Over time, your brain has literally adapted to protect your ego rather than to actually produce results. And honestly, once you see the deep psychology behind why this happens, you really cannot unsee it. Just think about the harsh contrast between these two stages of life. When you were younger, you were praised for effortless perfection. You got completely hooked on that sudden burst of pride from instantly understanding complex things without breaking a single sweat. But now, you're an adult. You look around and see people who struggled immensely in school, people who had to absolutely grind for decent grades, out there building successful businesses, leading teams, and making real, tangible progress. Meanwhile, you've got this super powerful, high-performance engine revving inside your chest, but the car just refuses to move. You're sitting on the sidelines watching less naturally talented people lap you in life. And it is an endlessly frustrating experience, right?
Well, that brings us to Trap 1, Gifted Child Syndrome and the Fixed Mindset. Let's see exactly how that early praise creates an invisible, suffocating cage around your potential.
It all starts with how you first learned to define what being smart actually means. Because you were rewarded for being instantly right as a kid, you never really learned how to fail. And because of that, you developed a pretty fragile ego. Psychologists call this the fixed mindset. Basically, you view your talent as a totally static trait. It's like a light switch. It's either permanently on or permanently off. So when you finally hit a wall in the messy, unstructured, real world of adulthood, and you actually have to put in hard effort to learn a new skill, it doesn't feel like a normal learning curve. It feels like a physical punch to your core identity. Your brain tells you struggling means I'm not smart anymore. So what do? You protect your high score by quitting before you can be judged. You stay dead quiet in a high-stakes meeting because you aren't 100% sure of the answer, and you'd much rather say nothing than risk being seen as wrong. Meanwhile, the colleague sitting right next to you blurts out a completely half-baked idea, gets corrected by the boss, adjusts their approach, and ultimately gets all the credit for the solution. They are playing the actual game of life, while you're just sitting there trying to protect the illusion that you already know absolutely everything. And this perfectly captures your missing superpower, the emotional space to simply feel confused. Average students mastered this critical skill early on because they had to struggle and occasionally feel dumb every single day in the classroom. They learned that confusion is just the normal, expected first step to learning anything worthwhile. But because things came way too easily to you, the second you hit a roadblock, you panic. You quit when heavy effort is required simply because you haven't built the necessary emotional resilience to look like a beginner. Moving on to Trap 2, Analysis Paralysis. This explains the severe dangers of overthinking and why your brilliant brain feels incredibly busy all day but manages to produce absolutely nothing in reality. You see, your high intelligence makes your brain act like an incredibly powerful supercomputer. If you want to start a business or write a book, you don't just think about the initial idea, you aggressively calculate every possible point of failure. Funding, legal risks, a market collapse, public embarrassment, you see all these dangers with crystal clarity. And because you see all these risks, you completely freeze. You end up masking this procrastination as productive research. You organize documents, you obsessively compare software, you build a high wall of planning to protect yourself, but no actual steps are being taken. It's literally just mental spinning. It's like being a brilliant chess master who effortlessly sees 8 moves ahead of their opponent. But if you never actually move a piece on the board because you're waiting for a totally risk-free, perfect opening, you end up losing on time. And the clock is relentlessly ticking in real life. While you stand completely still making the perfect 10-year plan and over-analyzing the landscape, other people, who frankly don't even know enough to be terrified of the risks, are just blindly walking forward and figuring it out as they go. The reality is, the cost of doing nothing is always higher than the cost of trying and failing.
You're constantly calculating the cost of failure and potential embarrassment, right? But you rarely ever calculate the massive cost of inaction. Ask yourself, what is it practically costing you to stand still for 5 years? While you spend agonizing weeks trying to find the perfect logo design to avoid looking amateur, someone else just sold 1,000 products using a business name they thought of in exactly 5 minutes. Smart thinking is entirely useless without simple, decisive action.
Which brings us to trap 3, novelty addiction. Let's dive into this hurdle because it fully explains why your incredibly quick mind makes you a chronic starter, but a truly terrible finisher. Because you have a remarkably fast mind, you desperately need things to be constantly interesting. Getting hooked on the buzzing excitement of learning something new is basically an addiction. When you start a brand new project, your brain is absolutely buzzing with potential. You get hooked on the intense dopamine hit of figuring out a new system or sketching out a new concept. But the exact moment you actually understand how it works, you completely check out. You secretly think you're way too smart for repetition, which leaves you with a massive graveyard of half-finished projects the second the daily work shifts from exciting learning to a boring, tedious grind. Think about the fundamental difference between falling in love and staying married. Anyone can fall in love with a bright new idea. It's chemically exciting, it feels effortless. But long-term success requires the marriage of doing the boring, highly repetitive work. It is the equivalent of doing the dishes, paying the mundane bills, and practicing the piano scales for the 1,000th consecutive time. You're deeply in love with the glamorous idea of success, but you completely hate the marriage of the grind. And the hard truth? True mastery only happens in that boring repetition that you keep running away from. So that leads us to the escape rules for taking action. Okay, we've thoroughly agitated the core problem. We clearly know the psychological traps keeping you stuck. So let's powerfully pivot to a concrete roadmap to break you out of your own head and get you moving forward today. First off, realize that you don't need to somehow become less smart to succeed. You just need to point your existing intelligence in a completely different, much more productive direction. To do that, we're going to look at 3 very specific, counterintuitive escape route tactics: entering the full phase, applying the do it badly rule, and aggressively increasing your feedback velocity. First step, enter the fool phase. Give yourself permission to be bad at things. You absolutely must detach your core self-worth from the immediate short-term result. Your goal is no longer to be a flawless genius straight out of the gate. Your new goal is just to be a student again. Remember the very first time you tried to ride a bike? You wobbled everywhere, you fell down, and you looked incredibly silly to anyone watching, but you kept getting back on the seat. You have to be deeply willing to wobble and fall in your adult pursuits too. And this leads right into building your daily momentum by applying the do it badly rule. You cannot steer a car that is permanently parked. You intentionally force yourself to take highly imperfect action. Write the absolute worst, most embarrassing first draft of a paper. Record a completely low-quality test video. Launch a basic website with a design you genuinely hate. You have to make the mental bar for starting so incredibly low that you simply cannot fail to start. Just get the car moving, and then use your powerful brain to steer and correct the path as you go. The next crucial tactic is increasing your feedback velocity. This means shortening the gap between having an idea in your head and getting the result and feedback by forcing messy real-world action in between. Smart people have notoriously slow feedback velocity. They typically spend agonizing months heavily planning and perfecting the pristine idea in their heads to carefully avoid the pain of negative feedback. You must aggressively shorten this loop. Take that new idea, violently force it into messy real-world action immediately, and get the painful feedback. Wrong action is vastly better than no action at all because it actually gives you concrete data to adjust your course. And finally, to completely cure that pervasive novelty addiction we talked about, you have to commit to a boring period. You must deliberately sit with uncomfortable, agonizing boredom and literally starve the need for novelty. You need to set a strict, non-negotiable rule for yourself. Firmly refuse to start any new course, any new book, or any exciting new side project until your current one is entirely finished. You're actively training your brain to value finishing far above the temporary thrill of starting. The harsh truth here is that intelligence is a tool meant to get dirty and build something real. The real world does absolutely not reward your refined ability to quietly wait for perfection. It solely rewards messy, real-world action. Your high intelligence isn't some delicate, fragile trophy meant to be kept perfectly safe behind a pristine glass cabinet. It's a heavy-duty, practical tool, and tools are explicitly meant to be rigorously used to get dirty and to build something tangible. So stop treating your impressive intellect like a fragile museum exhibit.
I'm going to leave you with this final, highly provocative thought to end our explainer today. Will you keep your potential safe in a glass cabinet, or will you do something brave today? Your intelligence is completely, utterly useless if you never dare to be a beginner again. Please do not trade your entire future for a comfortable, safe afternoon of endless overthinking. What beautifully imperfect, slightly scary, and entirely messy step will you boldly take right now? The clock is ticking. Stop waiting.